Hello and welcome, fellow bookworms and film fans. Welcome to episode 2 of the Contented Narrative. Now, within my episodes, I will be comparing the book narrative and the film narrative and how well our beloved novels transcribe to the silver screen. So, in this week's episode, I shall be looking at the young adult book series, a series of unfortunate events. Now, the first book was written in 1999 and the last one was 2006. They were all written under the pseudonym of Lemony Snicket, and he consequently is as well a narrator within the books. The film itself was put onto our screens in 2004, and it encompasses the first 3 books. So I do admit that Netflix did make a rather good adaptation there, which covers all the books. I will not be covering that one today. I might do it at a later episode, but for this moment, I'll be focusing on the first 3 books and the film. Now, as you know, I will be comparing it on 5 major points. So 1 to 10 on 5 major points. 1 is the character representation. 2 is the setting. 3, overall plot. 4 is the film good in its own right. And 5, how well the books transcribed to the screen. So first up in the docket is character representation. Now, there are many characters in the book series, but I will briefly mention some of the other characters, but I will be focusing on 6 of the major characters. So we've got the 3 Baudelaire children, we've got Count Olaf, we've got Poe, and we've got Lemony Snicket. So first of all, we'll come across the 3 Baudelaire orphans. Now, you've got Violet Baudelaire. Now, she is incredibly smart. In fact, all the Baudelaire children are incredibly smart. She's very inventive. Whenever she's coming up with an invention, what she does is she ties her hair back and suddenly she can think of anything to get them out of that situation. Wish I could do that. Probably could do with that skill later on in life. She's very supportive of her siblings, and she's very optimistic that there's always a reason why she got put with certain guardians. Now, towards the end of the series, she does sort of query that at the end and she becomes very skeptical of who she ends up with and why they've ended up there. But at the beginning, she sort of, we can make this work, we can do this. She's also 14 in the book. I think she's probably portrayed a little bit older in the film. I do understand why they do that, but you can't really tell the exact age because it's never really mentioned. Now, on the in the screen, she is phenomenally represented. In fact, all of the characters that I'm about to discuss are brilliantly represented on screen. You then come across Klaus. Klaus is, again, as I said, a very smart child. He's read every single book going, and he can pull that information up at the drop of a hat. Now, I wish I had his memory because I can barely remember what I had for tea last week. But he can, for some reason, remember a book that he read when he was 6 years old, which I think I read maybe Elmer or, Puppy in a Shoe or something like that. But he can bring that information forward like the drop of a hat, and it helps him out of quite a lot of situations. Now, he is, again, very protective of his sisters. He feels like he needs to be the man of the house now that, unfortunately, his parents have passed away. And he's very skeptical throughout the entire series. He sort of sits there and wonders why they've been placed with Count Olaf, of all people, for the first one. Never mind everybody else. But in the book, he is 12 years old, and again, you're not entirely sure quite how old he is on the screen. It's not really mentioned, but that's not really... They kind of keep him a similar age. Then you come across Sunny. Now, Sunny is an infant. She's the youngest of the Baudelaire orphans. She speaks baby, which only her siblings can understand. Nobody else can, so it's kind of got that little thing there for you. They're all very protective of each other, and Sunny is very protective of her older siblings. She loves to bite things and chew things. She adores it. I think she's teething, so she will literally devour anything. She will bite anything. She will bite on a chunk of wood. But she also is an aspiring chef. Now, you do come across this more in the later books. In the earlier books, it's sort of hinted at, but it's not quite experienced yet. So it is something that we do see develop within her character. But I know how hard it is to present infants on screen, and massive kudos to the director because it is done very well. Now we come across Count Olaf, and Count Olaf is portrayed by the absolutely amazing Jim Carrey. Now, he is a great actor who can do serious roles, and he can also do quite funny off the cuff roles. Now, Count Olaf in the books is he adores theatre. Theatre maybe doesn't adore him. He has his theatre troupe, who later he just gives up calling them the theatre troupe and calls them the henchmen, because that is what he is. That is what they are throughout the entire book series. We know that that's what they are. He's very good at costumes and designs, as you come across in the later books. Now, I say good. The children are never fooled. They know who he is, but the parents, the guardians, the people that are supposed to be in charge and supposed to know what's going on, they, on the other hand, are very easily fooled. A little too scarily easily fooled. He's very charming as well. Like, he's a very charming individual, and he can wheedle himself into any situation, and it's not until the big reveal that, oh, this character is actually Count Olaf, that any of the parents or guardians or anybody that we come across even thinks for a second that he is anybody but the person he says he is. And that is shown fantastically on screen. He is one of those people that when he walks into a room, he encompasses who he is. And as he walks in, it's sort of like, there he is. That is who he is. And that is brilliantly shown on the screen. Now you come across Poe. Poe is the banker, and he's sort of in charge of placing the orphans with new guardians. Now, you come across him, and there's no nice way of putting it, he's useless. He is a useless man. You would wonder why anyone would put him in charge of any money, let alone children, like actual lives. He is not a good person. And, well, he's a nice person, but he's not smart. He's easily fooled a lot. And he also blames the Baudelaires whenever they have to be put with a new guardian. He thinks it's their fault, and he'll blame them, even though it's clearly the fact that he hasn't spotted that this person that is saying he's Captain Sham and Stefano is actually Count Olaf, and he has killed the guardian. He blames the Baudelaires for all these people dying, and having to keep doing work, and you're just flabbergasted that this is who he is. But he also has this big racking cough in the books, which is portrayed on screen. And he is constantly coughing. And you'd think 13 books later, if you've still got that cough, I'd go to the doctors. I'd go to the doctors after 3 months, let alone however many years these encompass. But he is shown brilliantly on screen with that. Then you've got Lemony Snicket. Now, Lemony Snicket, as I said, is the pseudonym of the person that's written the books, but he's also our narrator. He will always tell you to turn back, to look away, don't read on, don't watch on. You know, it's a very sad story, and he feels the obligation to follow in the footsteps of the Baudelaires to find out exactly what happened to them, when it happened to them. And he basically goes through their lives and sees the destruction that's left behind after every time they're placed with somebody new. He is always hinting that there's more. And he's also, I do quite like this, because he'll say something in the books, and it'll be a word that if you're reading it as a young adult, you might not necessarily know. So they'll explain it, and they do that as well in the film. If there's a word that they think might not be as well known, they will explain it, which I think is really good. He's a very calming presence in the film, and he is cast brilliantly, and I really did enjoy his interpretation. Now, you do have supporting characters. As I mentioned, you've got the henchmen, the theatre troupe, and you've got a bald one who I think you can not tell if it's a man or a woman. You've got the one with hooks for hands. You've got the two sisters, and I'm sure there's another one. I can't remember who it is. If you do remember, please do leave below in the comments, because as I said, my memory, not what it once was. So they are portrayed great on screen. I do love how they are portrayed in the film. And you also see Uncle Monty, Aunt Josephine, you see Justice Strauss. Again, they are all very well presented on screen, and I appreciate seeing them embody the nuances that make them the characters that they are, and having that soul of who they are portrayed the way that it was. So I believe that not only did the film capture each character's essence, it was cast brilliantly. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and to showcase their traits, it was brilliantly done. So for this reason, I am giving character representation a 10 out of 10. So next we come across setting. Now the setting of the books is unclear because it doesn't actually specify a specific place or time. However, the illustrations on the covers of each book make you think it's sort of like an anarchic version of the earlier 20th century, or maybe mid 20th century. They do mention like technology, like they have computers in there. They have, I think, a steamboat at one point, but it is sort of like it has got this dark and dreary overtone to it, sort of doom and gloom. And it does keep the dark tone, and it does keep the costumes that you see on the covers of the books and you feel throughout the books, as well as keeping the modern aspects to make sure that people aren't completely getting lost. And for this, I will give it a complete 10 out of 10. It's completely got a 10 out of 10 for me. Now, we're coming across the plot. Now, the plot is very similar in both the books and the film. Now, there are a few differences, and I will mention those. So both do start off with the Baudelaire children finding out that the house and their parents have been completely destroyed in a fire. So they are orphans and they are homeless. And you find this out through the lovely, useless banker Poe. And the following books will place them with a new guardian each time. Now, as I said, there are 13 books, and later on in my series, certainly, I might have a look at the TV series and how well it presented the books. But for now, I am looking at the first 3 books, and I'm looking at how they were interpreted onto the screen. So you start off with The Bad Beginning. Now, The Bad Beginning is where you first come across your titular characters there. And the first person they get placed with is Count Olaf. And he is a terrible person and a terrible actor. Now, as I said, he does do disguises and he does fool the people, but you get the sense that when he's on screen, when he's on stage, nobody likes him, and he's not that great of an actor. But you still sort of come across, he is a horrible person. He's a completely horrible person. And in both the film and the book, as I said before, you get this unsettling feeling of doom and dread, which when you come across both him and the house for the first time. So the house is described as being big and dark and gothic, and you first come across him as he stood at the top of the stairs and he's just asking them to enter, and they've got holes in the roof, and the Baudelaires get put in a room with one bed. Sort of, it is, you see this shown beautifully in the screen, but also you do get this slight sense of hope, because in the book and on the screen they see Justice Strauss's house first, which is all beautiful flowers and happiness, and you think that that's where they're going, and you think, yes, it's going to work out. But of course it is called a series of unfortunate events, not a series of mildly inconvenient events. So you get that in the film as well. You sat there, you're anticipating it, you see them go up to Justice Strauss's house, and then you turn around and see, I think at one point a feral dog runs across as well when you first see the house. So that is brilliantly shown. Now, in every book, he's trying to get hold of the Baudelaire fortune. That's why he agreed to take them in, because he wants their fortune. They got left a ton of money. But then he finds out that he can't come across that until Violet Baudelaire comes of age, or she marries with a guardian's permission. Cue the nefarious and slightly disturbing plan that he comes across, because he can give permission for Violet to marry because he's the legal guardian. He can marry, the husband then gets access to the full Baudelaire fortune, and then he can kill off Violet. And he's done. It's sorted. He's got what he wants. Now, he gets foiled by the children in the book as well as the film, and they get placed with new guardians. So book 1 bookends, pardon the pun, the film. So you get the beginning of book 1 at the beginning of the film and the end of book 1 at the end of the film. So you've got the whole marriage plot is at the end of the film. And at the beginning of the film, you've got sort of him just trying to get the fortune. And at one point as well, he drives them out onto a train track and tries to get them run over by a train. Cheerful, I know. Again, young children's book, young adults book series there. So, as I said, in the film, they do end up back with him, but in the book, once they've foiled his plan, they never end up with him again. Not as Count Olaf, as other guardians that he has pretended to be, yeah, they do. So then you get into the second book. Now, the second book is The Reptile Room. And this is where you come across Uncle Monty. And Uncle Monty is an absolute delight. He's so lovely. He's so caring. You wonder why they didn't end up with Uncle Monty in the first place. He's also lost a child and a wife to fire, so he knows what it's like. And you get this sense of safeness and a sense that they're loved and actually cared for, and they're not just an inconvenience. And you do get this, and you almost want them to stay there and for everything to be okay. And Uncle Monty admits that they need to get away from everything and wants to fly them out to Peru, which they are happy with. They will happily fly out to Peru. But then just as you think everything's going well, and you've come across all this beautiful, because Uncle Monty's a herpetologist, I think that's how you say it. Again, I apologize if that's not how you say it. So he has, like, he's got a load of snakes and frogs and all sorts. He loves all that, so hence why it's called the Reptile Room. And you do also get hints at this secret organization called the VFD, which they believe their parents were a part of and Uncle Monty is a part of. And you think as well, because you see this eye tattoo that's common on Count Olaf's ankle, you think that there's something going on there as well. Now, just as you think everything's going well, everything's going perfectly, cue Stefano. Now, Stefano is, funnily enough, Count Olaf in disguise. Now, he insinuates himself into their lives, despite the fact that the children are repeatedly going to Uncle Monty. That's Count Olaf, that's not Stefano, please don't trust him. He is not who he says he is. Uncle Monty thinks he knows better, because adults always do, apparently. And he pays that price with his life. So he ends up being murdered. Stefano makes it seem like the incredibly deadly viper has killed him. And he's then going to take the children away to Peru. And with the help of his henchmen, he almost gets away with it. However, Sonny has made friends with the incredibly deadly viper. Now, the incredibly deadly viper is not incredibly deadly. It's a misnomer. And Sonny shows up that actually this viper is just loving and caring and will happily play around with the children. So then Stefano obviously, well, Count Olaf obviously then doesn't get the children and is back on the run again. Cue Poe coming in and moving them to Guardian number 3 while blaming them. Still going, oh yeah, we'll catch him. Don't worry, kids. You don't have to worry about that. You know, but I can't believe you. You're going through your third Guardian in as many months, basically. So then you come across the Wide Window. Now, the Wide Window finds the children then with Aunt Josephine. Now, Aunt Josephine is again a member of the VFD. And again, you get hints of what it is. Now, I'm not going to tell you what the VFD is. What I would recommend is read the books. Just they are really good books. They are quick, easy reads. Read all 13 books. You get answers. Not maybe the answers that you want, but definitely you do get answers. Now, Aunt Josephine is terrified of everything. Now, I'm scared of spiders. Most 99% of people are. She, however, is scared of things like you can't have a hot meal because if you turn the cooker on, it could explode and kill you. You can't walk past the wardrobe because otherwise it will fall down and flatten you. You can't use a door handle because if it gets overheated, it will shatter and make you blind. You can't use a doormat because you could trip over it and end up braining yourself, and so on and so forth. So I think they end up eating cold pea soup. So Violet and Sonny and Klaus try to come up with more cold options of food that they can have that's not soup. And you get this feeling, although they're not as happy as they were with Uncle Monty, they still feel a little bit safe with her. They do find out later that she was an adventurous person and she was married to a gentleman called Abe. Now, we find out that Abe, now, as you know, if you eat, you normally have to wait an hour before going swimming. The only reason why we say that is if you get a cramp and you can't swim. However, if you live near Lachrymose Lake, you get devoured in your entirety by the lachrymose leeches if you haven't left it an hour. Apparently they can smell food. It has to be exactly an hour. It cannot be 59 minutes and 59 seconds. It has to be a full hour. Now, another point as well is, despite the fact she's terrified of everything, her house and you see it in the film brilliantly shown, and you do get that feeling on in the books as well, is atop a cliff essentially, and it looks like at any point, and at one point it does, it ends up in the lake because essentially it's being held up by planks of wood, and you're just sort of like, that's gonna go, you know it's gonna go. And funnily enough, it does. So she's also very obsessed with grammar and English language and literature. And the reason I mention that is because I will tell you in a second. So they are happy there. Not as happy as they were, but they are happy there. And then they go down to the market to try and get ingredients, to try new dishes. And they meet Captain Sham. Two guesses as to who Captain Sham is? He is, of course, Count Olaf in the flesh, which again, the kids are like, that's Count Olaf, not Captain Sham. And Aunt Josephine is, no, I know what he's like. I think at one point he has a wooden leg attached to his leg. Don't know how he did that, but he does it so that they can't identify him by the ankle tattoo. So Aunt Josephine falls for him. Somehow, again, no idea. He must be a very charming person. He gets Aunt Josephine to sign over guardianship of the Baudelaire children to him, and then he kills her, asks her to write a suicide note, and then he throws her out a window. Now, the Baudelaire children get back to the house and realise that this has happened. They see the note, and they're just like, right, what are we going to do? Because then you hear Captain Sham being like, children, I've come for you. I'm your legal guardian. So what they then do is they then decipher this note, because she is a grammar Nazi. She would never make mistakes. And they find the clues within that in actuality she's hiding out at a cave, and they go and get her. Now, on the way back, they get attacked by leeches because she'd eaten a banana and not waited the full hour, but not told them that she hadn't waited the full hour. So as they're going back, so they go over to the cave in this tempestuous storm, and as they're coming back, they get these leeches, and you get this really tense scene where something's going to happen, you're not entirely sure who to. In the books, Captain Sham arrives and saves them. In the film, it's Count Olaf. Now, you find out why it's Count Olaf in a second, but he turns up and he saves the children because he realizes he needs the children for the fortune. But instead of saving Aunt Josephine, he sacrifices her to the leeches. So, of 3 guardians they've had so far, 2 have been killed. Not just killed, murdered. Now, the reason why in the film they had it as Count Olaf is because Poe then comes out and sees Count Olaf rescuing these children. And he rescues the children, and they end up back with him in the film, for the final scene, the marriage scene. And it is bizarre because, again, you think he tried to run them over with a train in the film, and yet they're still giving it back because he's shown that he's tried to save them from the leeches. The adults in this series, I just have no time for. So this is the difference mainly in the film to books. Is in the books they are then placed with Guardian number 4. In the film they go back to Count Olaf. Now they go back to Count Olaf, and you do come across the wedding scene where he tries to marry Violet using Justice Strauss, who is a real justice of the peace, so the marriage will stand up in court. In the film, they burn the marriage certificate. In the book, she signs with her left hand, and she's right-handed, so it doesn't count. Either way, it gets foiled. Now, in the film, they foil it, he gets captured, and then he's forced to relive everything that he's made the Baudelaire children go through. In the book, he gets away, because in the book, he gets away, then you get Guardian 2, Guardian 3, Guardian 4, so on and so forth. So that is quite a big difference there. Now, as I said, like there is a little side note. Like this, it does make me love the books. As I said before, because it does come up with words. See if I can find one. It comes up with words that you wouldn't necessarily know. Oh my god, PA Contenter. That's my married name. That's my unmarried name there. Let's see. I can't say any at the moment, but they do come up with words, that necessarily they don't think children might know, so they do explain it. And I do love the fact that the film keeps that as well as in the books. So because of the fact that it keeps pretty much the entire plot the same and only adds a little bit extra, and bookends the book one and for the beginning and the end, I will give it a 7 out of 10. A 7 out of 10 for the overall plot. Now, does the film stand in its own right? Honestly, I have nostalgia for this film. I adore this film. And I adore the books. I've watched the film, I don't even know how many times, so many times over. And rewatching it for this episode was an absolute delight for me. I loved it. I think if it's something that you just want to watch, something that you don't have to think too much about, you can watch it on a dreary day, you can watch it on a happy day. It is a nice film. And for this, I will give it a 9 out of 10. I feel like you could watch this film over and over again, and you can enjoy the film. You don't have to know the books to enjoy the film. So the final one is how well the film portrayed the books. Now, as I've discussed several times, in the plot section, there are a few differences when it comes to the linear telling of the story within the film. But the fact that the film uses the first book as bookends of the story, and it ends, as I said before, with Count Olaf being caught and charged, and that is very different. Now, the casting of the characters with Jim Carrey as Count Olaf and Jude Law as Lemony Snicket, not to mention everybody else, it helps to bring the film closer, I believe, to its source material. They really captured who the characters were. They captured the plot. They captured the setting. And you really do get that feeling. If you've read the books and you've watched the film, you get the feeling. And I was quite happy with how it was portrayed. So for that reason, I am giving it an 8 out of 10. I think it was good. It was well portrayed on the screen. Now, of course, as I said, everything that I say here, this is my own opinion. If there is anything that you disagree with, anything that you'd like to discuss, do leave it in the comments below. I do put out new episodes every Wednesday. Do click subscribe and like this video if you enjoyed today's episode. Now, join me next Wednesday for the contented narrative around Stardust by the fantastic Neil Gaiman. So until then, have an absolutely fantastic week, guys, and always keep it contento.